The Connector Next Door is your invitation to meet the natural connectors all around us. They represent the everyday event planners who are energizing their communities every single day. Their stories are familiar, fun, and full of charm. Your host, Lisa Garrow, is a lifelong event planner and has been a connection strategy coach for over a decade. She knows events can become energized connecting points where communities can gather and grow. Let's listen in as she strikes up a conversation with today's Connector Next Door.
Grant Assenheimer grew up as a farm kid, worked as an engineer, traveled the world as a humanitarian worker, and landed as an executive leader. Grant has had an outstanding career as a water engineer, has worked with Doctors Without Borders, and sat on the MSF Canada Board. Grant is now back in Edmonton and has recently completed the Executive MBA program at the University of Alberta and is currently the CEO of Belongify, a workplace culture startup that helps leaders improve team performance by creating cultures of belonging. Belongify co-founders Lauren and Garrett Rubis set the Belongify team, including an impressive list of certified Belongify coaches, on a mission to help leaders create a culture of belonging where each individual's value is known, appreciated, and optimized. As the CEO, Grant is excited to see leaders embrace and activate the Belongify system, as he knows when leaders help their teams eliminate feelings of isolation, increase a sense of value, and recognize individual contributions, they will also see these same employees thrive anywhere they choose to live and work. Well, welcome back, everyone, to the Connector Next Door and to a really special conversation with Grant. I'm so glad that we met. We kind of bumped into each other because you sent an email saying, hey, there is an opportunity to collaborate. And I thought, hey, that's really cool email. And we're going to talk a little bit today about who you are as a connector, your work, how that's led you to the work that you do today. But welcome here. I'm so glad that we connected. Welcome to the conversation today.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
It's funny when I get emails, and lots of times they just go into junk, right? Because it's like, oh, we want to do something, or help you update your website or whatever it is that they're sending. And it may or may not apply. But anytime someone uses the word connection, connector, collaboration, that piques my interest, because for me, that's where our world is going. That's where a lot of value is found. And as we chat about where you're at today and the work that you're doing today, it's really cool to see how you've built that into your day-to-day now. Before we get to all of that, and I know you were saying you're not sure, I'd love to hear your answer on this, but what connection means to you it's a big question, but it's something that I think when we start digging in, it's so fascinating to me how everyone has a different answer to it. But maybe we can start right there, Grant, if you're willing to go there with me. What does connection mean to you?
Yeah, sure. It's I've also been listening to some of the past episodes of your podcast. So you get a sense that like you said, it means something different to everyone, and people see connection. I mean, the whole point of being here was having a conversation with you around what does it mean to be a connection strategist, and realizing, or an events planning and connection, and just realizing that even though I see myself as a CEO of a startup in an organization doing workplace culture, it's all about events and connections. And that seems like something we're spending a lot of time doing. So it's interesting to see how that frame around connection kind of drives a lot of things. And anyway, it was a good moment when I was the conversation came back to me, and I had to reflect on it a little bit. But what does connection mean to me? I mean, I think, like, thinking about it quite personally, it's about being present, and I think being engaged, and then really curiosity drives it. And what I find, so for myself, so I've been going through, for the last couple of months, I've been playing within the network of our founder and using his broad network to try to raise awareness for Belongify, the organization that I'm leading. So I've been playing within a really interesting and engaged network, which has been fascinating. And every conversation, you have no idea, because you're the only thing that ties you to this person is that they know or follow someone else.
Yes,
Like,
interesting.
so why is that? So you approaching everything with this real openness,
Mm,
opportunity, curiosity, I think would be a good way to frame it, has been a fascinating kind of reflection on myself about why I enjoy these kind of things. And it's like
mm,
looking on LinkedIn and opening up a website and checking to see who they are and trying to figure out their history and looking about what might tie us together and doing all this, I guess you could call sales, business development prep. But really, it's just me being genuinely curious about who they are as people,
yeah.
where they come from, and like, let's have an interesting conversation. And that's been a fascinating kind of way to dive into some relationships or some connections with different people. And I think because it's not like me going, okay, how can I convert this to sales? It's me being genuinely
Mm.
curious. It's led to things that I didn't ever anticipate happening. For example, this podcast.
Well, and I think even like I love this stance of curiosity, because then the other person on the other end of the phone or on the other end of the Zoom or whatever, however you're having these conversations with these people, it's not like you know who they are and you're everything about them, and now you're reaching out to them because XYZ, and you've already established how you might work together. I think that curiosity allows us that room to play, that sandbox of ideas that are just kind of floating, and you're doing this over here and I'm doing this over here. Being curious about what's happening on the other side of that playground, it sometimes allows us that space to meet in the middle, that maybe had we come with too much of a controlled agenda, we would never get there.
Yeah. Yeah. And I find it's maybe something that I'm not always that good at, right? Like because you're busy and you're doing lots of stuff and you want to get to the next thing and there's lots of things going on. And
Yeah.
like active listening is another way of saying curiosity. And like in the end,
Mm.
you value that and make sure that the open door is there and that people can come in and bring whatever they want and that you're willing to listen and engage. And sometimes that you have to remind yourself how important that is, and you don't always remember. But when you really don't know them, you really have to, you can't. It's a because it's just about curiosity. So I find that this process has been really good personally too,
Mm.
as I've reinforced the power that this kind of conversation can have. And that's gonna help kind of in the other parts of my life, I guess, and different things that we're
Yeah.
doing.
So how does it inspire you or kind of egg you on to the next thing or keep you engaged in your work when you do have a lot of contacts? So it's not that you have a shortage of people you could be reaching out to. Kind of staying with it and continuing to be curious and finding ways that you're kind of folding these ideas into where you're going next. Do you find that it gives you that energy to continue to chat, or do you find it a little overwhelming or excited for what's next?
I think I'm not there yet, but I'm close to like hitting my limit of being able to like keep engaged and being curious, because it's like there's been a lot. And again, the network I'm playing in is quite vast and quite interesting.
Yeah.
And and I think what is allowing me to do is I'm able to firmly sit in this like awareness raising phase, doing it for a set
Mm,
amount of months, but knowing that like, and for me it's going to be the fall, I can't be doing this anymore. I can't be
right.
just looking to explore and engage. I need to be specifically leveraging those connections that I've made for the different purposes.
Yeah.
And I think that's not a problem. Everyone's aware of that. They want that too, because they want to follow up with me in a way that's effective for everyone. They
Hmm.
put their hands up because they care about the project that's going on and they want us to succeed. So it's
Yeah.
great to have a nice conversation. It's good for us all to be curious, but in the end, we're here to support each other, and that means
Hmm.
going beyond that. So I think there's something in understanding that it's a limited number, that it's only going to last for
Hmm.
so long, and that at the end of it, because the caliber of those connections is so high, that you know that it's going to work out in the end. So
Hmm.
there's a yeah, I think it's also, I mean, to take it a step further, I'm also quite comfortable in this space, and I'm less comfortable in what's next, where you have to now narrow the focus
Yeah.
and try to figure out how you then leverage or work with this
Yeah.
group to succeed. That's less certain. That's maybe not as comfortable having great conversations with a lot of people, right? So somehow I'm
Yeah.
able to hide behind this a little bit too, saying, yeah, connections are going to be great, and it's going to have to force myself into that next phase of it.
Well, and it's like any growth of anything. And I know when we've chatted a couple of weeks ago and you were talking about this startup energy that is around what you're doing. And as much as there's the founder's been around a long time, established idea, the program's built out, you've got lots of coaches engaged. So it's not that there isn't an established group that's already kind of working this plan, but where you're going, what's really interesting to me is that when we kind of expand, and then there needs to be this almost contraction to, well, how are we now working together? And it reminds me a little bit, I've got this program called, which is kind of where this podcast came from, the Connection Architect. The key to it is building with connections first. So the foundation of connections first allows us to build a structure around it, and not everyone can fit in at the same time into what we're creating. And it doesn't mean there isn't going to be an ebb and flow and that we can build on additions and all of that. But the work of kind of now creating something that people can adopt, they can be part of. I think that's the exciting part, I think, where I see where you're going. You're making all these fantastic, curious connections, and then where this could actually form into something where now people are able to be also curious with others. And how does that grow from that space of connection? We're kind of teasing people a little bit because they don't know exactly what Belongify is. Can you share with us what that project is? And then we'll talk a little about how you chose this and how you're involved in it today.
Sure. I mean, I just want to touch on something first, and then we'll hit to
Of
this
course,
one,
yeah.
because I think it's interesting where I talk about connections and how you're laying the seeds in advance and how that's going to lead to something else. I recently finished my MBA, and within the MBA, we do this capstone project, and the research was around how to increase the potential to raise capital for a service sector organization like the ones we run. So like, how do you increase success, or how do you scale these things? And the one line that sticks with me is, if you go asking for money, you'll get advice. And if you ask for advice, you'll likely get money. For me, that piece sticks with me, because what it suggests is that you need to build relationships, you need to build community, and you need to be a giving person to your time or your effort, your stuff, because in the end, that will come back to help you. But if you just come out and ask for the start, it's never going to work. So I find that as a really interesting parallel to the idea around curiosity and connection. And that's, I think, how it's going to pay dividends in the future.
Love that. I love that. And what I love too about that is that it's saying that I don't know everything there is to know about you or about what's possible here. Sometimes we forget, especially in a startup kind of environment where everyone's on board and we're going and we need that capital to move forward. A lot of nonprofits are in that space. We just need to raise the money. But if we would flip that to having that curiosity first, that could actually take us, money will follow. Beautiful.
Yeah. You asked a little bit about Belongify and what it is, what this project is. Our tagline is that we're a workplace culture startup, and we help leaders improve team performance by creating cultures of belonging. So our target is leaders. Our tool is workplace culture. So we're trying to improve culture, and our objective is ultimately team performance or bottom lines for companies. If we want to help improve profitability or team performance, and we do this as it's less about training, it's less about coaching. It's more about putting a leader and their team through an experience where they're going to feel for themselves what it could be like to be in a culture of belonging. And we do that quite intentionally, because it's ultimately delivered in 5 one-hour sessions over a 6-week period. So basically, you take a leader, you have their team together, and you give them 1 hour every week for 6 weeks, or depending on schedules, however that works. And each session is quite unique to the different factors that we believe influence cultures of belonging. But at the end of the 5 days or the 5 sessions, you haven't created a culture of belonging, but you've gotten the leader and their team working in the all together, heading down this path. And it's sort of it's an intervention where or an experience where they're going to together go through something that shows them what it'd be like if, for example, you have a more psychologically safe workplace, or if you spend time actually getting to know your people, or if you've all connected and you all know your individual purpose for being there and the purpose for the team and the purpose of how it all fits together, or if you're aware of why you're unique as a team, why you're unique as individuals within this team. So if you're aware of all of these components and you've gone through an experience together that's kind of led you to this, like, oh, so that's what that means, then you will be better off as a team to continue down this journey together. We're not trying to say the leader needs to do it all. We're not trying to say the teammates need to do it all. We don't want to take people out of their day-to-day. We want to incorporate it into their work, but we want them to feel what it would be like if it's a different culture.
It's a fantastic model, and I'm curious where curiosity comes into that.
Yeah, I think there's I mean, the most like obvious one is in our first session where it's about connecting with people. And it's the first session we do it very intentionally. And really what the point is talking about personal storytelling and the importance of people knowing each other's stories. And that's what the whole objective of the session is. So what we do when we run the session is you do a simple sharing circle, essentially. Like people are given 3 minutes to share the answer to a question, a deeply personal question, like what is the most difficult decision you've had to make in your life or something. So like it's this, and it's active listening. No one comments, there's no feedback. It's just you listen to everyone on the team for 3 minutes and you go around. And people are amazingly vulnerable in this moment. And they're sharing stories that are deeply meaningful for them, which most of the people don't know. And I think that's where the curiosity comes out of it. Because at the end, you've gone through and you've listened to this person for 3 minutes. And it could be like there's any number of versions of what people share. Tears, like it's that people are quite thankful to be asked, open for the opportunity, almost hungry to want to share something about themselves or have people listen to them, because maybe that doesn't happen so often. And at the end of the experience, people are like, whoa, like I've been working with this person for 5 years and I had no idea that that this is where they came from, that they have an elderly parent at home, where they came from and how hard it was them to come to, whatever the story is, that we've just been working, you just work, and you just don't take time for that. So then you're leaving people with this real sense for like, wow, that was impressive. I thought that session was great. What if this became something I did with my teams? Or if I did this more often, or what if we actually like took time every meeting to check in with everyone on a personal level? And it's sort of challenging the paradigm. I mean, it's already shifting away from this world's melding where work and personal life don't mix. I mean, that's already sort of COVID finished that off basically, where everyone was sort of integrated, but it was shifting already. COVID really had an impact on that. And this is just that reminder of how powerful it can be to know people's stories, and then really challenging people to be curious about who's around them in their day-to-day.
What's neat about that too, I think sometimes we fear if we open that can of worms and we ask somebody about a hard time of life or a decision they had to make, like what you said. What are they going to say? And what am I going to do with that information? Where are they going to take this? Do I have the time to listen? Have you had some people say, I just don't have time for it, or I feel like that would hijack the meeting? Why don't we do more of that in our workplaces?
Yeah, it's interesting. I think I have two points on this. One, I think, and like I'm an engineer, I'm a problem solver. So as soon as someone opens up, I want to solve all the problems. Like this is my general tendency. And we need to not think like that. That's not helpful. That's why people don't share. That's why people don't open up. Like because it's not about solving problems. It's about listening. And I think that's that's the first thing is around like, we have to stop trying to fix everything. That's not the point. The point is compassion, empathy, awareness, like understanding where they're coming from. So I think that's the first thing. And then the second thing is you can not have time for it, but it exists regardless of what's happening. Like it is there. Whether people are telling you or not, it is impacting productivity. It is distracting people from their life. It is taking more time than you can ever imagine. And if you're not even open to having a conversation around that and be willing to follow up with what this could mean, like, then you just won't know. But the whole point of Belongify and helping leaders improve team performance with cultures of belonging is that the bottom line is this improves performance. Right. The whole point that you make time and you accommodate these things, it builds people's willingness to go above and beyond. It gives people the reality that the time and space that they need to be performant. and empowers them to take some stuff into their own hands and to be a little bit more engaged. So, I mean, the essence behind Belongify is challenging that real point that if you think you're too busy, you're missing the whole point of what a performant team can look like. And I think this is, I mean, now that's me on my soapbox, but it's somehow the entire point around what Belongify does.
Yeah. Interesting that you're saying that maybe we're used to in our life somebody trying to solve it. I'm a recovering problem solver with my girls. They're both adults, and that's so easy for me to go there. But exactly like you're saying, that's not the point. And when we get to that in our work environment, there's so many dynamics at play. And it's interesting that if we feel like we're not going to be heard, or we're used to somebody jumping in and solving the problem, why would we share? And so the beauty of what it seems you're describing, I haven't been through one of those programs before, but it sounds like you're actually showing them how it can happen. And when you're saying 3 minutes per person, that there still is a framework around the sharing, and you're holding space for them in a way that maybe they haven't experienced that before, where there's a safety in that share, and that nobody's making a comment. We're not clicking the like button. Oh, I like that one a lot, or making a comment on what someone else said, either criticizing or tuning out to what somebody's saying. But I really love that there is that open space that's created by the Belongify coach or the team.
Yeah, it is definitely one of the challenges that people bring up is like, well, then like what happens if someone brings some major thing and you end up with like you're on a one-on-one meeting. I mean, my one-on-one meetings always start with how are you and how can I help, right? That's the whole point of the one-on-one meeting of how can I make sure that they're doing okay and how can I remove barriers. And like, well, I remember launching that in my last organization and really having people being concerned, well, what if they say something crazy, and then you need to support them and send them home if that's okay, right? Like if they're really dealing with something, because they're not going to be helpful in that meeting, they're not going to be helpful for the rest of the day. Like that's the entire point of being in a place where people feel comfortable sharing and then supportive with the action. And sure, that might mess your day, but on the long term, it's going to have a broader impact for the organization and your team. And people have a hard time sometimes seeing that because they're focused on getting to the deadline or getting the project done. And I think that's what ends up happening is you end up having these cultures where people don't share and they aren't willing to take time, and it is just pushing through. And then people burn out. You have people leaving faster. You have people disengaging. You'll have poor employment. Like all of those things are consequences of not actually thinking about those things.
Can I ask you, when you go through the Belongify steps or the sessions that you take them through, what is it about that helps them feel like, and we've talked about the sharing part of this, but how does it make them feel like they belong if they go through these different sessions and you come out of it at the other end? What is it about that? Is it the sharing? Is it that now we have some kind of common understanding of who we all are? What creates the sense of belonging specifically?
I mean, again, two parts probably to the answer, because one is there's very specific, like the sessions are very different from each other. They're very specific and they touch on the 4 elements that we believe are cornerstones to cultures of belonging. So deeply personal storytelling, knowing your people, you have the psychological safety, like that piece becomes a big part of a culture of belonging, connecting meaning and purpose to your work, right? You can be, I mean, people can be as open and you can be as included in all the conversation, but if you're doing a job you don't even care about off in the corner, like you're never going to feel like you belong to that organization. So having some real personal meaning and impact in that is another thing, is a third piece. And the fourth piece is on understanding that everyone is unique and that's okay, right? So your team is going to have a unique special sauce or like the way that they want to be seen is going to be different than other people. Everyone within that team is going to bring a different value. And when anyone on that team changes, it's going to reset everything. Things are going to morph because that's just how it works. So it's about understanding, celebrating that, recognizing that it's maybe going to change, and then figuring out ways to adapt. So you have these 4 things that are that's making a culture of belonging succeed, is by having all those things in place. So you can go through the 4 sessions. Of course, we don't spend, like, psychological safety, you can take a whole day workshop on that. Like, and psychological safety is broken up into different elements around, like, working through mistakes and accepting mistakes and about having difficult conversations. And there's, like, many layers to it. So we don't pretend at the end that that it's done, that you have a culture of belonging, that then you're now great at the end of our 5 sessions. But you will have certainly had an experience that will have told you why you need to care. You would have felt something in that session saying that, oh, so we just had a complicated conversation in a psychologically safe place. That was powerful. Maybe we should lean into this more if we want this to exist in our group. So it's opening people's eyes to the elements that are needed, and providing, I guess, if you're in a bigger organization, it's actually providing an opening for all of the learning development, HR, whatever policy, the EDI, all that stuff that already exists in the organization that maybe you're not paying so much attention to, or that maybe people are behind on, or that. So you're providing an opening into why some of those things matter. Or if you're in a smaller organization, it's like, you need to pay attention to this, because if this is your goal, here's how you get there. Yeah. So in a way, it's highlighting the elements of a culture of belonging, and having people go through this experience to show them why they're important. So that's the first thing. That's very technical. That's very much, these are the 4 different things. I think what happens, why people love our process, is because of something that you experience together, right? So at the end of each hour, you go, it's because we focus on the experience. We don't lecture so much. We're not going to spend an hour talking about psychological safety. We're not going to spend an hour saying you just need to, connect with your people, and storytelling is important. We're going to put people through an experience together where they will feel that. And that's, this is this shared experience, I think, is so powerful in bringing teams together. That's why people do team building, because they're going to go axe throwing or something like that, because then they have all gone through axe throwing. They've done something together. It's awkward. It's a little bit weird. It's funny. It's whatever. But at the end of the day, you've done something together that makes you feel part of the group. Yeah. And what we're taking that idea, but we're not doing it with axe throwing, because again, we can be more smart. We can be smarter than that. We're going to do it around experiences on the cultures of belonging, and have people go through these 5 1-hour sessions where they experience something together as a team. And by the end of it, they're going to be like, man, we are more cohesive because we've just gone through this together. And I think that's probably the real magic.
Love it. I love what you're saying about creating that experience that they can look back on, or they can say, oh, there's some evidence of that we did connect, or there was that really cool session where we did that thing. And now they've got that shared experience that they can share even with others, the energy around that with others. Is that part of your personality that you, when you're looking in on this and you're saying, if I can create that kind of experience, not just you alone, you've got a whole team of coaches. When you said yes to take the leadership in this, what of that is part of you that you've brought into this work that you're doing?
Yeah, it's interesting, because I'm not the facilitator, and that's a really important part, right? Like the founder, Lauren does some of the facilitating, Lauren Rubis, and some of our other coaches, we certify coaches to deliver the content on our behalf. And that's just how we've chosen to structure the business. So they're all bringing, and whenever this is the beauty of it, right? Because the framework that exists for Belongify, it's like we have very specific sessions, and they're going to add their own little bit, and they're going to draw something from what they have, their lived experience, or they're going to draw something just like any good facilitator would around different tools and stuff that might fit for that group. And we're open and flexible to that stuff. So it makes the standard 5-session 1 hour over a 6-week period can be quite a bit richer, because it ends up being, I'm just going to send you something that was really relevant today from my past, and they get something in between that's a bit more, or maybe it's tweaking something as they're going through it with a story or something that brings it. But personally, it's interesting. I that's definitely one thing that, spending time abroad with Doctors Without Borders. This is the organization I'm still quite a big fan of, and spent years abroad, and value this a lot. I find that, and it's a hard thing. I find that experience really is meaningful for me. I'm not in any way attempting to recreate that in a 5 1-hour session with a team. That's not at the same level. It's people. I've engaged with people from with a military background, and they talk a lot about this and missing that when they leave the military. Where is that community? And I would feel the same way. I miss that connection to those people. So Belongify is in no way that we're not able to replicate that, but maybe a little bit. right? Like maybe there's a little flavor of
Totally.
that people are going to see. And because it's so lacking in most workplaces, it doesn't take a whole lot for people to be
Mm-hmm.
like, oh wow, that's a like a lot of people don't even do the axe throwing. Like this is something that I
Yeah.
think so like even that's great because at least you're taking time as a team to figure out and get to know each other and to
Yeah.
and to like do something outside of work. So and there's disc and there's other things like there's things that people can do to bring themselves
Yeah.
closer as a team or be a team, and we're just taking a little bit more with that experience around culture and helping that and hoping that that makes a big difference. It definitely drives my participation in or my desire to drive or why I like this experience piece, and I think
Yeah.
why I can have so much impact. And the second thing for me around what brought me to Belongify, I guess that's the second part of your question or the part of your question. I really found I was like in my last job experiencing a workplace that had a really big push around EDI, and you wanted to support it. But
Mm.
I'm not the champion for that. I'm the middle-aged white guy. Like this is not my role. The
Mm.
privilege I have everything. I have all of the privilege, and that's everything that I feel. And how, as a leader, can you support that or can you champion that? And it was a really challenging situation for me because you're in this
Mm.
leadership role where there's this movement where you can't lead. You shouldn't lead. That's not the point. And wanting to make space for that, but then what do you do as the leader? And
Mm.
I find leading through a culture of belonging is the perfect way to do this because
Ah.
you can absolutely 100%. Every leader has the responsibility to create cultures of belonging in the workplace. That's
Mm-hmm.
a that's a for me that's a stand that's everyone has that responsibility, and within that you need to have things like a psychological safe workplace. You must champion the equity, diversity, inclusion work that's so important, that's happening everywhere, and that needs to continue. And you have to realize that there's more elements that go into that from a workplace culture perspective. So for
Mm.
me, it provides a really inclusive leadership model that sometimes I found lacking in some of the those EDI discussions where very
Mm.
intentionally it's a time for people to focus on specific aspects that need to change to the exclusion of others. The Belongify organization spoke to this desire that we can have inclusive leadership at that higher level, and
Mm-hmm.
that allows us to be champions and supportive of all these things that are happening within our workplaces.
Well, and it seems to be a vehicle where, as society grows more, learns more, there's lots of things I'm sure that will come up in our future. We feel like our eyes are wider than they ever have been collectively, I hope, but we're not done yet. There's going to be more that we need to do. There's going to be more stories we're going to need to hear, and you have the privilege of actually sitting and listening to somebody else. And it does feel like when you're talking about Belongify being broader than that, where no matter where in the world, and I'm sure Belongify would adapt anywhere, it just opens up these conversations. And like you were saying, you're not going to learn everything about psychological safety in the hour or so that you have with a group, but it will open that door and give you at least the framework where you can start building from that. When you say it's inclusive, it is for any one of us that are willing to go there. And this podcast is for the people that are really looking to connect better in their meetings or in their groups or their AGM or at that gala or whatever it is that they're planning. And when we talk about how do we structure it for connection first, what I love about what you're saying is it's already set that way.
Yeah, back to curiosity, but also just this idea around like we just need to be together and work through all of our problems, and we
Mm,
can kind of use this system to do that in a really constructive way.
yeah,
And then at the end, is it done? Well, of course it's not done, but it's really getting everyone
yeah,
together working at that same at a same level towards a common goal. And then there's work to do. Like it's not like
yeah.
at the end of the five Belongify system, like if we've just opened many doors often, and we've given people tools to follow up, and we've
Mm,
allowed them to feel that it could be better. And now the real work starts because you have to actually follow up and start being like that.
right.
And
Yeah.
I find this personal accountability is so much more powerful than having this individual, like you just think everyone together is going to help each other go through this. Is not going to be sitting on one person, or the leader's not going to come out of it with a big to-do list at the end of it. That's not the point.
Right. And that it can grow with the company, that it's something that they can build on over time. That's amazing. Right. I'm noticing we're getting close to time here. I would love to hear from you just before we say goodbye here. If there were people out there that are planning experiences for their team, what could be something that you could leave with people that we work with here, in-house do-it-yourself event planners that are struggling a little bit to find that sense of belonging in the people that they're gathering together? Anything that you would like to leave with them that they could put in motion?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's this connecting before content piece that's key, right? And I think that's one kind of mantra we have, this connect before content. And you think about that, it's taking before every meeting or every email or whatever, you're thinking about, and you'll see yourself, you'll go like starting with the work, oh, just even put a how are you, and I heard you did this last week, whatever. It's just this idea that you're going to connect with the people before content as a way of being. And I think that has the ability to totally just transform, because it shows that you're open, it shows that you're curious, it shows that you pay attention, and you're going to have interesting conversations because of it. So I think that piece, incorporating that into your leadership philosophy, into who you are as a person, and making sure that you're staying open to that, can have dramatic impacts in your teams. And it's easy. It's easy. That's the thing. You can just start a meeting with a round and have a quick ask of how people are doing, how they are today. One word, check in. Like, it doesn't have to be anything too complex. And I find that if people do that, they will have already the first part of this culture belonging starts to take shape, right? You don't need to go through the process to do that. Of course, it's Belongify. I don't mind if you call me. You have a 5-step process that you get there. But this idea that you can do this really easily, start changing how you are as a team, and can be really powerful. And I think that so that's the one piece that it's just what we say at the end of our sessions too. If you only remember one thing, I mean, that's the thing. Like, remember to just be human, to engage, and to make time to know who's around you, and everyone will be better for it.
Yeah. Amazing. And you did say that they would be welcome to call you. So I know that you are looking to grow and have more of these conversations, and fall's going to look pretty amazing for Belongify. So I'm sure they'll want to connect. How can they connect with you to learn more?
Yeah, the website's the best spot, I suppose, www.belongify.com. There's buttons there, just book a meeting with me. Like, that's a great way to just connect, because it's also okay to send an email, but it's also, I think sometimes it's nice just to have a personal contact. I'm becoming more active on LinkedIn. It's a work in progress, but like I follow it along, so you can also find me there. And that's a great way to engage, and you start following some of the stuff we're doing in our newsletters and what's going on with us. But yeah, or email grant@belongify.com. I mean, those are the ways, right? And truly just open to explore with people about challenges they have with workplace culture, or thinking of, or where they are in terms of their leadership journey, and wondering how we can continue the conversation. And maybe that leads to some Belongify. Often it might not, but the point is just building those connections and seeing where they go.
Yeah, that's amazing. So would they it doesn't matter what size of organization, is that right? Like, they could have a few people as employees, or they could be a multinational organization. Does it matter kind of where they fall?
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, we're working with leaders who deeply care about their people, who are already mastered the basics, right? So because this is not an entry-level leadership course, it's kind of the second level. So you've got kind of the basics under control. And you're looking to move things forward from wherever you are. So if you happen to be the CEO and you have a C-suite team, and you want to be different with that group, and you want to lead them through a process that's going to help you get on the same page, it's a great way to do it. You can be a frontline leader who maybe is stuck in an organization that doesn't believe so much in culture, or is a big bureaucracy that's having a hard time shifting, or it takes too long. Well, this tool is priced at a point where it's accessible to some of these leaders, and they can like change within their own domain and take control of what they have influence over. So So like that's a really good target for the leader and their team. And I mean, it really depends. You get into the sales pitch and all the stuff around what size of organization, and at the end, there's probably places where it's more appropriate than others. But really it comes down to the leader and their desire to have that people first approach. And then once, because at the end, they're going to be responsible ultimately for guiding their team through this process and then beyond. So for it to be more than a team building exercise, the leader needs to deeply believe. And that's who we're looking for. The challenge is that no one's going to say we don't want a culture of belonging, but very few people know how to actually take practical steps to get there. So we want someone who's asking those questions, and then we have a really good tool that helps them work through some steps to start down that path. And that's who we want to talk to.
Beautiful. I will put all of the links in the description below here, and we'll make sure that we're leading people to where you're chatting about Belongify on LinkedIn for sure as you grow that. This has been really a joy to chat with you. I have felt right from the beginning that there was something that's going on between, how we talk about connection here at Candy and what you're doing at Belongify, and I'm excited to see where we'll go together in this collaboration. But for today, you've given us lots of nuggets that we can take home and really apply. If we started to set that pace for our teams and had the openness to have these discussions with our teams already, that is a really nice shift where we can start seeing culture that's going to change. How do we feel on our teams, in our organizations, and where we'll actually feel like we belong? Thank you so much, Grant. I so appreciate the time that you've taken to chat with me today.
Great. No, it's been a real pleasure. And like you and I talked about this before we were on air. I mean, it's not something I've done a lot of, and I really appreciate the opportunity to start speaking about Belongify and how it can really make a difference in leaders and in organizations. So I'm really happy to have the chance. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
The Connector Next Door podcast is produced by Candy Event Consulting, where everyday event planners and their teams gain clarity, get connected, and grow in confidence. Subscribe at www.candyconsulting.ca to hear visits with everyday event planners who are putting connections first.